Yes. Yes.
Try to be there.
Go fire.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Fagan, the Finance Director for the City of Des Moines. And this is part of our Speak Up DSM meetings that we've been putting on throughout the community. So hopefully most of you had an opportunity to see how you need to log on if you want to participate as we move forward on what your polling things are. So basically what we're going to do is do a test here in just a second. We're going to allow a little bit of time for you to try to get online, and we'll move forward. We'll have some basic questions just to make sure that we get it, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So here's the test we want to do for the polling here, and the question is, what day of the week works best for you to attend public meetings, and rank those in the order from best to worst. Okay, thank you for that test. So as I said, we're going to talk a little bit about our budget meetings and how it works. So I'm going to start with kind of what our agenda is for the day, and so you know what to anticipate. So first thing, we had the pre-discussion poll. We'll have a pre-discussion poll, which will gauge where you think you are in understanding the process of budgets for the City of Des Moines. Then we're going to discuss the budget process. Then we're going to talk a little bit about our FY18 budget successes and challenges. And then we'll have a slideshow of where your tax dollars go. From there, we're going to do a tabletop exercise, and we're going to be doing that in here, so you'll be able to see how that works. And then lastly, we'll go back and show, we'll have a post-discussion poll just to kind of see, was this worthwhile? Did you learn some things that we were trying to share with you? So what is the goal of today? And the goal of today is to make sure you understand the process, how this works, and we want to inform our citizens on the budget process. So here's our pre-discussion poll. On a scale of 1, which is not very clear, to 5, which is very clear, do you understand how the City of Des Moines budget is funded? Okay, our next question would be on a scale of 1 to 5. Do you know how to get involved with the budget process? The next question is, are you aware of all the factors that influence a budget decisions? Okay, next question is, do you understand where your property tax dollars go? Okay, next question. Are you aware of what city services you receive from your property tax dollar? Okay, we thought we'd share some of the successes we've had or some things that have been going on in the city of Des Moines, some of the accolades we've received. The city of Des Moines was named the #1 best affordable place to live in the United States. We were also the #1 most affordable place to buy your first home. We were the 3rd most popular city for millennial home buyers. And lastly, we're in the top 5 best places to live with low cost of living. We're pretty excited about those. This next thing is that our budget overview. It talks about the city's budget and what makes it up. So in our fiscal year 2018, our total budget fund was $686 million, a little bit north of that. Of that, the pie graph that you're seeing there kind of shows where it is, but one of the things we want to point out is of that, really 25% of that budget is paid by general funds. This next screen shows a little bit about the budget process. And as you can see, there's some cogs in the wheels and what goes on. Don't let the size of those cogs, those are just more for descriptions of how that is. So for anything to come forward, there's a lot of processes that have to go through. First of all, the input from the public is very important. The City Council takes those in with other things, as well as when ideas come up, we have what's called Guide DSM, which is our strategic plan. So we want to make sure anything coming through would meet that. We also have our Plan DSM, which is our comprehensive plan. We have master plans because the city likes to lay out exactly how things ought to look. We want to make sure those are consistent. And there's several other cogs in the wheels that before it ever gets into the hopper. Like, do we have enough finances, or you can kind of pick your spot. So in the end is all those things kind of go into a funnel and not everything comes out. And that, the purpose of that is to show you there's a lot of good ideas. The city is very focused, the council is very focused on what actually gets through to make sure it meets what they thought would happen with all the plans that are put in place. Some of the successes that we had, we were enhancing our public safety. The city was successful enough to get a SAFER grant, which was able to pay for 3 years, 13 firefighters. So those did, at that point, they were not part of your tax dollars to make that happen. Also, the police were able to get body cameras and support from those outside of the city dollars as well. Through the plan, one of the things that was highlighted was a social equity coordinator. She's now been hired. A transportation planner, which helps us with our transportation items or complete streets. And then lastly, razor focus on neighborhood focus. So one of the pieces that came out is a contract sales inspection program. So to kind of explain what that is, basically when you have somebody who wants to sell their home and on contract, somebody wants to buy it, the city has now put another processes in there where they can come in and kind of identify some of the things that are going on in that house. So when somebody buys it, they know exactly what they're going to get into. Because the last thing you want is somebody to get into a house and later find out they have quite a few challenges to make that work. This next slide is the general fund sources, so where do we get our money? And of the money for the general fund, I think a lot of people think it's all funded from your tax dollars, but about 54% of what we get in property taxes covers where our source of funds come from. Franchise fees are one, or hotel motel tax or others. So this pie chart kind of illustrates where we get our funds from. Like any business or any city, there's a lot of concerns and challenges outside the city's control. Commercial rollback slash backfill. I think it was in 2013, the state legislature put in a process that would change how commercial property taxes or commercial property buildings are being taxed. And it used to be at 100% of their value, and now it's down to 90%. So that's kind of a new challenge to us, out of our control. That means we lost 10% of what our valuation was. Also, apartment rollback was one of those things that came through the legislature as well. We used to get 100% of those for your apartment buildings and things, and now over the next 8 years that's going to be brought down to about 55%, which would be very consistent with what most people pay for their homes as well. Rising costs of things that the city can't control, like health care, pensions, and construction. And the state legislature continues to do things. And again, I'm not here to say this, what they're doing is right or wrong. It's just some of the decisions they make impact how the city's able to tax to make sure that we get the right amount of services that the public wants. Some concerns and challenges of the operating capital budget, aging infrastructure, which includes facilities. So we've got quite a bit of that going on in Des Moines, and those are a challenge to try to make sure we can get those things done. Also neighborhood improvements, the removal of blight, get into the neighborhoods with doing things like street and sidewalks, and then corridor improvements. Public safety demands, that's growing more and more, and to make sure we have enough staffing, and one of the things that was talked about recently was make sure we have enough fire stations where we're at. And then lastly, the demand for high level of service for the growing and diverse population. So we're going to show you where your property taxes go. Okay, now we're going to get ready to start our table exercise, and we understand you won't be able to do that from home, but we will have this available where you can pull this off. So, based on $100,000 assessed value, a resident in the city of Des Moines pays $2,427 for total property tax paid. Keep in mind, that's all the property tax, not just the city of Des Moines. So as part of the process, the individuals that are here today will have 110 beans to distribute on the board which I think we'll bring up here shortly for you. And they're going to have to make sure before they decide what services they want, they have to make sure they pay the mandatory taxes. So as I said earlier is, the City of Des Moines does not make up all the tax revenue that comes in. A certain portion goes to the county, the school, and other individuals as well. And so when they're doing the board to make sure they have to fill those in before they start distributing the beans along the way. So this will be a group exercise, and they will have the ability to allocate the remaining beans. And by the way, the 110 beans we talked about represented about the value of a $100,000 home and how that'd be spread over. So we're going to start that here and kind of work with the individuals that are here today, and we'll show how that works. Put the board up. Now we have the board on the screen. So I'm going to be here if you guys have any questions. But again, if you kind of got the gist of it, so I would encourage you to start out with making sure you put the proper amount of beans up in the county and the school and the other services they get out of that as well.
So we need 16 in county.
That's 10.
That's 10.
11.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
There's 20.
I'm not sure I understand.
And here's 30. Oops. And then an 8. Right?
Yep.
You used all your 2 out of that. That was a 38. Push those up there. So we have.
So once you verify, you put there and there, put the beans in the proper places.
Yep.
I'd encourage you guys to kind of work as a unit and kind of talk about the different squares that you have, and encourage the conversation. And I'll answer any questions that you might have as you do that.
So we have 48 beans left to place. And the numbers in the corner of the squares represent.
They do.
We have to allocate those numbers. You need one more.
There we go.
We have to allocate those to begin with.
Well, which you guys should talk about is that.
This is a suggestion.
The secret is there's not enough beans. So
Yes.
you might want to talk about where you might want to put those. So you might want to take a look at the squares and which ones best fit what you as a group feel are the most beneficial
But
to
the
you.
numbers in the corner
Yes.
represent what?
Yep. Just one bean, or this one over here is
Okay.
2 beans, or
Got it.
Yep.
So is that all it takes for emergency communications? It just takes 2 beans.
Well,
doesn't take any more.
it does based on the services that are in there. Yeah,
Okay.
you bet. That's right.
Okay. So we could choose to underfund them if we so choose.
No. You,
Or
you
partially
could.
fine.
Partially. Okay.
Ideally, we'd like you to fund exactly what it takes, because it's kind of hard to split a service up.
I
So.
understand that. Okay. So we have to decide. So.
Okay.
All right.
So
I think we'll give 1 to fire maintenance and technical services. You guys tell me if you don't like what I'm. Major streets should probably get its 2.
I think that these 2 are important.
This one and this
As it
one.
relates to employment, housing, and safety.
Traffic control is probably a good thing to have.
What is the description for trails? I can't read it.
Maintenance of 60 miles of paved multi-use and 18 miles of soft surface trails.
Okay.
My wife would chastise me if I don't fund the libraries, so I think I'll do
That's
that.
important.
I think emergency communications is key.
She's not. I don't think she's watching. So go ahead and put what you think.
She
I
might
think
be,
she'll
you
know.
never know.
Recreation,
We're going to fund recreation.
quality of life.
I know someone who would want me to fund trees.
Should go ahead and fund the trails. We don't want anybody
Trails.
tripping without the
That would be bad.
You sure there are not enough beans?
We're gonna get close.
We're doing
Well,
good.
we haven't hit 7 and 8, which are lunkers.
Fire
over there.
response and support. Response to calls for service. Operations of 10 fire stations. So we do need that.
You're gonna put all of the beans on fire. There's 4. Here's the 8 beans for fire. Okay. Police investigation. Don't want our crime to go unsolved, do we? So we're gonna fund police. Okay.
Oh, patrol.
And then patrol. Cops are hungry for beans. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Is there a reason why patrol and enforcement is separate from
Investigation.
outreach?
Oh.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah,
descriptions
this is-
underneath them kind of give you a
Community
general idea of
outreach
that.
is positive relationships with the community and schools through the neighborhood-based services delivery and school resource officers. So this is your officer in every
And
school,
SROs.
and yep.
Seems like that's.
Okay, we've got, if I do my math right, around 16 beans to go.
What's the description for plan and zoning?
Lead development, planning, and implementing community and regional plans, staff support for zoning boards. So your pre-applications to make sure developers follow their zoning ordinances, someone to look over the zoning ordinances, and they're planning on updating the zoning ordinances soon.
Okay.
For right now, we'll give them their beans so our city continues to look like it should.
It seems like sidewalks and neighborhood streets.
Could get one. City and human rights. Civil and human rights.
I'm just trying to figure out what the
Corridor
difference
streetscape
between these
improvements.
two were. That's litigation.
Where's litigation?
This one's litigation. We funded this one. This one's
So that we don't have to have litigation.
promoting equal
Engagement,
opportunity.
education, and training.
Preventative.
Sure. So this is after something happens for human or civil rights, and this one's preventative measures.
Seems like that should happen
So.
together.
Okay. Let's see. Where's the books? We got library and library. We funded this portal. That's library resources for their hours and their books. This is the technology computer services, and this is outreach and programming. I think our world is moving towards more computer savvy people, and that's where a lot of people in town get their computer services if they don't have broadband at their home. So that's a needed function. We have 7 beans to go. Should we try and just put 1 on each and see if we get close? I think Parks needs 3 though. So we've got a 1 here, a 1 here, and 2. So if that was that way, that was that way, we'd be really close to funding it exactly the way it's at. So that's our 110 beans if we just chose to put it the way they have it on the sheet. So if we gave fire for investigation and prevention, educating
control.
people, and control.
Control of arson fires.
That's nice to have.
Yeah.
I think we should civil and human rights investigations and civil and human rights mediation and conciliation litigation. So we have corridor street improvements. And where was the other street improvements? There's another street improvements.
Street improvement.
We have the major streets.
This is more. It
This
seems
is
like
Corridor.
beautification.
Beautification. Oh yeah, there you go, neighborhood streets. So if we beautify it, we gave our library our outreach. That's how it shows it's all done.
So then, no
We
neighborhood
didn't-
inspections.
So where do we pull to get neighborhood inspections done? Pull from parks and cemeteries.
How many?
I say code is probably more important than that component. So
Parks,
it's-
right? All of them.
Oh, okay. We have to fund the whole thing.
So we can't
We can do
partially
some.
fund.
We can do some United Way drives to figure that part out. Yeah.
Parks Department would
Yeah.
disappear altogether. Okay.
Although recreation would still be there, they just wouldn't have
Yeah.
a place to recreate.
They just wouldn't have anybody to take care of their facilities.
So we'll take, if you need longer, but basically the purpose of this is, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this, is to show there's for lack of having fun here, there's never enough beans when the council gets all this stuff together. So that forces them to have conversations like, do we cut a service or do we raise our tax rate, things of that nature. So again, sometimes we're successful in getting grants and other types of revenues as well. But that's kind of what it is. It's not like the city never has almost enough. It's just always that little bit that you have to make those tough decisions. But to some people, those tough decisions are more intensified over others. And so when you have the group of council up there, they're trying to. That's why the public input is very important, so they have an idea where the public thinks are their priorities as well. So you comfortable where you're at?
No, but
Not?
I mean, for me, it really has brought up, as I'm looking and reading some of these things, conversations around efficiencies and how we run things too. But that's probably another conversation. But we could probably find some grants to fund the parks and cemeteries.
Awesome.
In a perfect world.
Okay. So now we're going to go into our post-discussion poll and see if maybe you learned something along the way. So the first one is, do you understand how the City of Des Moines budget is funded? Next question is, do you know how to get involved with the budget process? Okay, next question. Are you aware of all the factors that influence budget decisions? Next question, do you understand where your property tax dollars go? Okay, next question. Are you aware what city services you receive for your property tax dollars? Well, I want to thank you, especially those that came in today to do the board exercise. I also want to thank those that took the time to watch our afternoon program here. But I also want to let you know, if you want to do this live, our next meeting is going to be at the Forest Avenue Library, which is 1326 Forest Avenue. So hopefully we'll get to see some of you there. Thanks again for your time.